Go. There you go. There you go.
He come up out here. All right. Look at that.
They're slippery, Mark.
They
Hang
are
on
slippery. Holy smokes, are they slippery.
What's
Look
that
at that.
hook?
Hey, my name's Mark Romanack. You're watching Fishing 411. Stick around because we're with Ron Bergman up in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we are going to catch some whitefish. This is going to be cool.
Offshore Tackle presents Fishing 411 with Mark Romanack.
Gobbled up that thing. Look at that, he's in the bag. Look at this!
Fishing 411 is brought to you by Offshore Tackle, the leader in trolling technology. Okuma, high performance. Vicious Fishing. Northwest Ontario Tourism, there's no place like this. Jay's Sporting Goods, get in gear. And by Yakima, home of the rooster tail.
My guest on this show is one of Wisconsin's more popular guides. His name is Ron Bergman. He lives in Appleton, Wisconsin, and he's been one of the guys who's pioneered this whitefish fishery out on Green Bay. In fact, he's actually developed a rig specially for whitefish, and we're marketing it through Bait Rigs Tackle. So you can actually go out and buy the rig that we were fishing with out on Green Bay.
Mark, what you do out here with the wax worms is what we're using on the rig. I actually keep them in my pocket to keep them warm, and that keeps them ignited. A lot of guys lay them on the ice and they just die, which is not what you want to have. But a little trick I use is when I grab the grub, I literally take and put the grub on upside down right underneath the head, like so. And then I bring it over and bring it up through the belly. Just like so. That's on the top one. And on the bottom one, the treble, I'm going to use 2 to start with. We may go to 3. It'll all depend on what the fish want. But I just hook it once, right underneath the head. You can tell the head on a waxworm because one end's dark and the other isn't. By the way, if your waxworms are black, they're frozen, and they just don't work real well. And that's the setup right there. That's the rig.
The whitefish rig is unique in that it is different than any other kind of rig I've ever fished. It starts with a jig on the bottom. It starts actually with an oddball jig on the bottom, and then they cut the hook off. Now, I know that sounds strange, but they replace that hook with a stinger, a little treble hook stinger on the bottom. And then there's a fluorocarbon leader added to it, and on that fluorocarbon leader is another jig threaded onto the leader. It's called the slowpoke that can slide up and down on the leader. Now, both the jig that slides up and down and the little stinger on the bottom are baited with wax worms. And this is drop to the bottom and then jig it a little bit, drop to the bottom, jig it a little bit, and drop to the bottom. It's amazing how effective it is. About 70% of the bites came on the jig that slid up and down, and the rest of them came on the stinger hook. But we caught fish on both.
Nope, I got him. I got him anyway. He's coming right up to the hole. Oh. There we go, Mark. This little guy we're going to let go, though. The trick is hanging on to him. It ain't catching them. It's hanging on to them after you do catch them. Look at that slowpoke, Mark. It's hooked right in the upper lip, right where they should be. I catch crappies, everything with a slow poke, and they get right in there. There he goes. No worse for the wear. Cold on the hand and slimy though.
You know, the water on Green Bay is exceptionally clear, and in that really super shallow water, 3, 4, 5 foot, the fish are amazingly spooky. If a quad or a snowmobile would drive by, the bite would stop. 20, 30 minutes, you wouldn't catch a fish. And then after it quieted down, then you'd start getting bites again. So whitefish are extremely spooky fish. You have to fish them in situations where it's absolutely quiet.
This is a nice fish. Hold on. Hold on. Get him over there. Oh, 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 oh. Yeah. There he goes. He's gone.
Is that what we call the professional release there?
Yeah. You know what? I wouldn't have released him. He broke the line on the ice. He broke the line on the ice. Oh boy.
Ron, there's a fish. It's not a very big one, but hey, there we go. There's a one of those sides that's probably going to end up going back here, but this gives me an opportunity to talk a little bit about whitefish. Some of my musky fishing, I'd actually fish a bait this big.
Yeah. Yeah.
But whitefish get much bigger than this. But what most people don't understand is whitefish are actually a member of the trout family. They're more closely related to trout than any other species, and they're super abundant in the Great Lakes. We happen to be in Green Bay here, but there's lots of other places where a person can catch whitefish like this if they know how to do it. And if you stick around, we're going to talk a little bit more about the rigs and tell you exactly how you can get yourself started fishing for whitefish. I'm going to put this boy back. All right, let's let this guy a little way back. There he goes.
Additional considerations provided by Evinrude Outboards and Starcraft Marine. Additional considerations provided by Ontario's Algoma Country.
We had a couple other guests on this particular program as well. We had Kirk Herman from O.J. Herman & Company, and he provided the Argo that got us out on Green Bay and got us back safely. Those are beautiful rides. Anyone who's looking for the ultimate ice fishing vehicle, it is the Argo, because if you ever do break through, they float, unlike snow machines and quads and all those other things that we use. Argo, safest way to be on the ice. Also, my brother-in-law's son, Keith Cavias is my brother-in-law, by the way. His son, Mikey Cavias, I shouldn't call him Mikey, old enough now, he probably wants to be called Mike Cavias, went along with us, did a little bit of filming with us, and helped out in fishing, caught some whitefish as well.
Got one. Ooh. Whoa, he came up quick. I'll tell you, when you're in 5 feet of water, it don't take much to get them out. There we go. That's not a bad one. But it's awful nice to hit them like this. It's a little different. You know, we can go out deeper and we can move further north as the season runs on for us. And when I do that, it ends up being, you know, I mean, we'll get up to 35 feet of water and still be close to shore. But he'll eat. He's a good eater. The other thing, Mark, is I don't know if you notice or not, but when I lay them down, I more or less lay them. You don't want to throw them out on the ice. Look at that other hole there. I don't want to get them down there. There we go. But you don't want to bang them either, because you'll actually bruise the meat. Fish.
Look at that. Look at that, man.
There he is. Whoa, they got
well done.
One. Yeah. That's icing a couple quick. Another nice whitefish, Mark. Send him over there.
You know, if you're interested in testing out this white fishery and doing it for yourself, you probably already own the right rods and reels for this, especially if you're a walleye fisherman. If you do any ice fishing for walleye, the rods and reels that you would ice fish for walleye are going to be perfectly suited for targeting whitefish. About a 24 to a 28 inch medium action jigging rod with a 15 to a 20 size reel. Now, because we're fishing shallow here, we're using monofilament or fluorocarbon. But if you get into deeper water, you're probably going to want to try some low stretch braid. It'll be just perfect for catching whitefish. You know, we're fishing in Green Bay and there's a lot of whitefish here, but there's a lot of whitefish in many other places of the country. Most clear water lakes in the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes area are potentially going to be whitefish fisheries. The problem is that most people just don't know where those lakes are because whitefish is one of those species that folks just don't fish for. But if there's whitefish in your favorite lake, chances are you can catch them with these rigs. This is better than the last one, I had to tell you that. Oh, this is pretty good fish. Oh man, that's a long reach down there. There he is. There. Whoa. Let me see if I can, they are the slipperiest fish I think I've ever handled.
They are. By far, they are.
Look at this thing here. Let me get it up here so we can show it off a little bit.
Yep. You want, I'll take the hook out.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and...
There's that slope hook right. Look at how it just up through the upper lip like that is perfect. That's the nice thing about that bait.
Oh boy, he's hooked good, isn't he?
You did a good job on him. That's what I said about the bait. You're not gonna...
There we go.
But the trouble in the oddball's over in your ankle there. Be careful when you move.
All right, well, we're cool there. Well, what we're using here is a special rig made especially for white fishing. In fact, Ron was the guy that helped design it for bait rigs. And it's unique. It's got a jig on the bottom, but they cut the jig hook off and they put a stinger on the bottom, and then up above, there's a slowpoke jig that actually slides up and down on the harness. Now, we're using waxworms for bait, and we'll show you some close-ups so you can see what this rig looks like. It's like no other rig you've ever seen, and I'm telling you, it works great.
It really, really does.
Every single fish hooked in the mouth, right in the roof of the mouth.
Right now, it's an upper hook bite.
Well, yeah, that's not a fast bite by any stretch of the imagination.
No,
but we're having some good luck, and we're having a lot of
30
fun.
below wind chill factor, and the snow is blowing. And
Well, I'll tell you what I'm catching is a fishing education. This is cool. I've never done anything like this. This is really neat.
You know, and the other thing is we're only in 5 feet of water.
That's pretty amazing to me too, because most people would think of whitefish as deep water, and back home in places like Grand Traverse Bay, they fish 80 feet of water to catch these.
Yep. And I fish here. This is Voltz's in the Bay of Green Bay, and then you go up to Brussels, you go to Bay Shore Park, so you can move. Yeah. And I kind of follow the fish too, because they migrate and they move in schools. And today they're just not in as thick as I thought they were going to be. But
well, I'll tell you what, we're catching a few and we're having a great time.
That's some good eating.
And that's for sure. We're going to enjoy some good eating. So I'm going to just put this one out of the way over here, and we'll go back. You have that towel I can borrow, sir?
Yes, sir.
They are slimy. Yeah, it is warm. They are slimy.
Additional considerations provided by Bert's Custom Tackle. American made, American pride. Mark Romanack's Fishing 411 is brought to you in part by O.J. Herman Company.
There we go. Seems like a pretty nice fish. My name's Jake Romanack and I'm with Fishing 411. And today, there we go. Today, I'm here to show you guys how to catch some nice bluegills through the ice. That's a pretty nice gill right there. Hopefully, we'll see a couple bigger ones today. One thing that I feel is really important when you're ice fishing is having some high-vis line. If you don't have high-vis line, you're gonna miss those subtle detected bites. Sometimes you have gills that'll lift up the bait, and with that high-vis line, you can actually see that line twitch, and that is gonna put a couple more fish on the ice for you, because without that, you wouldn't even know they were biting.
Well, the ice fishing segment is actually co-hosted by my youngest son, Jake. Now, Jake's 18 years old, and you have to understand something. He's been ice fishing since he was literally big enough to pick up a 5-gallon pail and follow me out on the ice. So when it comes to bluegills through the ice, the kid can fish. The lake where the bluegill segment was actually filmed will remain a secret. It's actually only a few yards from my house, not quite that close, but it's very close to my house in northern Michigan, and so obviously I want to keep it a little quiet. It's been a really good place where we can go in an evening, and for 2 hours of fishing, Jake and I can get enough bluegills and crappie for a nice mess of fish.
They're not huge gills, but anyone would be happy to get a plate full of those. Well, the jig that I prefer using is a Cobra panfish jig made by Bait Rigs. And the reason why I like this jig so much is it's got such a wide gap. You can stuff a whole bunch of different waxworms, mousies, whatever you choose to use on the hook. Another thing is the hook is angled up, so when you set the hook, it's going to set it in the roof of the mouth. That's the toughest spot of the fish, and that's your best chance of getting them up through the ice. There we go. This one doesn't seem huge, but it's another nice fish. Let's get them up here. Not a big fish, but you're gonna have that when you're bluegill fishing. There's gonna be your nice fish mixed in with your small fish, and you kind of just gotta weed through them. It's actually kind of fun in my opinion. It kind of dulls the lull of the action, get a couple little fish in between your big ones. The one thing I never see ice fishermen do is wear life jackets when they're out on the water. This is pretty early ice. Now, we've only had good ice out here for about a week. And I like wearing a life jacket just to keep me safe. A lot of times I'm out here by myself and I won't have anyone to help me if I fall through. I like using these inflatable life jackets. They'll light up. Oh, there's a nice fish, huh? There's beautiful fish. Oh, nice crappie. There we go. It's a pretty nice crappie. You know, some people consider that a pretty small crappie, but in my neck of the woods, that's a pretty decent fish. And in this cold water, they're great eating. They taste just like bluegills, so he's gonna go on the pot too. Well, as I was trying to say before, but got interrupted by a fish, it's really important to have life jackets on. Most ice fishermen don't have these life jackets. And I feel like I fish a lot by myself, and I wanna make sure that I have something that's gonna keep me safe. That if I'm out here by myself and I happen to break through, that something's gonna keep me up. These life jackets, they deploy as soon as they hit the water, and they're definitely a good thing to have. Probably should go on your Christmas list if you're looking for something for a family member, because that's the way to go, is having these inflatable life jackets. Well, every pan fisherman uses bait, and I found the best way to use it is use these insulated pucks. This is called a bait puck. There's 100 different kinds out there. I just like this because it's small, easy to put in, and it's crush proof. You don't have to worry about the little plastic containers that your grubs come in getting crushed in your pocket. Those are pretty nice to use. And then the one thing that I really like doing, and that sets me apart the most ice fishermen I think, is that I'll set one on there and put another one right next to it. There's no real mystery why I'm using two here. They're bait stealers. And you can miss a fish, you'll know that they grabbed one of your grubs. But if you have two on, you know in the back of your mind you have two on, so you can drop back down, and 90% of the time you're gonna catch that fish. Here we go. And I know this isn't a big gill, but if you can see here, I have one waxworm on. And that goes right back to telling everyone about how I had two waxworms on. I missed that fish, and I let back down, and I ended up catching this fish. I know it's not a big fish, but when you do have that opportunity with the big fish, having two waxworms on is gonna catch you these big fish.
Additional considerations provided by Lowrance Electronics. Find, navigate, dominate. Additional considerations provided by Mustang Survival. We save lives for a living, and Bait Rigs Tackle.
Wow, that's a nice fish, huh? Here we go. It's a little bit nicer. There we go. Okay, I'm up through the, there we go. That's what we're out here for. Right here. Now this is a bluegill. I've only been out here 5 minutes today, and now I have 4 beautiful slabs on the ice, and I owe it all to my sonar. There's a flasher and there's a liquid crystal. Either or, it's gonna help you catch fish, it's gonna give you the edge, and you definitely want one. Oh yeah, and one more thing. Not only does sonar help you find fish, it also shows you where your bait is in relationship to the fish. And I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second, but let's keep fishing.
You know, it won't come to any surprise to avid ice fishermen that early ice is the best time to be targeting these crappies and bluegills. This particular segment was shot just before Christmas, and typically in northern Michigan, that's when we get the first best ice. And we push it about as hard as we can push it. As soon as that ice gets thick enough that it'll support safely the weight of 1 or 2 men, we're out there targeting those bluegills, and that's when we have our best fishing, is in that first week to 2 weeks of the season.
Holy cow, I don't know about you guys, but this gets me charged up. Nothing fires me up more than some big bluegills through the ice. The one thing that I found that's greatly improved my success for ice fishing over the years is I started off using a gas auger. I used to carry it around. I always smelled like gas, and I didn't give it a second thought. The last couple years I switched to these new electric augers, and they've definitely improved my fishing. The only way I can figure that's the case is because I don't have that gas on my hands anymore. Bluegills are pretty picky fish, especially when it gets to later in the season. And if you don't have your hands smelling like gasoline, that means your teardrop's not gonna smell like gasoline and you're gonna catch more fish. I switched to the electric auger about 2 years ago and I'm never gonna go back.
You know, Jake covered most of the important things that you need to understand about catching bluegills through the ice. But just to reiterate a little bit, it is important to find these fish, and sonar is critical to that. And once you find them, sonar is even more critical to seeing where these fish are in the water column, because they're not necessarily on the bottom, they're not necessarily suspended, they can be anywhere in between. Once you see them and you can see your bait in relationship to the fish, you can actually see them to react to your bait. And that's where it gets interesting, because as you move the bait and the fish reacts to it, you know you're going to get bit. It's really exciting fishing.
We got some nice fish in the hole today, and we're definitely going to take some advantage of this. We'll get him on the pile, go ahead and get back down. A big mistake I see with some people when they're ice fishing is they don't have their transducer in the water right. All right? What you have is a piece of foam, a blocker, and your actual transducer. What you want to do is you want to get that transducer level with the bottom of the ice. If it's going any further down, you're not getting a clear bottom reading, and if it's up in the hole, you're not going to get a clear reading of the fish. Your best bet is to have that transducer perfectly level with the bottom of the ice, and that's going to give you the best reading for catching your fish. Well, what I just did there is I got some nice fish on my sonar, and they got some nice big deep red marks, so I know that they're decent sized fish. And I tried to get them to commit and they wouldn't go. So all I did is I reeled up and I took my existing wax worms, I threw them off, and I put some fresh bait in. A lot of times just that little bit of fresh bait has enough to entice them to bite. Here we go. Now that's the fish we're looking for right there. That's an absolute toad, whatever it is. This is a beautiful fish. Let's get him in. Oh, it's a nice crappie. Real nice crappie, look at that. We're just mixing species right now. We got bluegills and a couple crappie, but we're having a great time doing it, and I hope you guys are having a good time watching it.
Closed captioning for Fishing 411 has been brought to you by Cranberry Creek Marina on Lake Erie at Ruggles Beach. Fishing 411 has been brought to you by Offshore Tackle, Okuma, Vicious Fishing, Northwest Ontario Tourism, Yakima Bait, and Jay's Sporting Goods.
Here we go. You butt crack! Can you say that on TV?
Yeah,
dang it!
You could say that.
That was a nice fish.
Serves you right.
Ah!